Please welcome back to the stage to the Mr. Tsai Liang. We are setting up the seats here, so slowly like the film, you know. Thank you for the experience. I think also the interpreter. Yeah. And shall we call also Li Kangsheng? You wanna call him?
我们请我的演员李康生、小康。
很开心，我所住在柏林上片那首映，那我其实走得蛮辛苦的，你们也看得出来。其实我通常导演设计一个镜头都是让我从入镜到出镜，所以是非常长的，然后有时候是有好几个 take， 对，然后有时候地板太热，我也只能坚持走下去。有时候会很多水泡，对，所以蛮辛苦的吧。对。
I'm very happy to be here at the premiere at the Berlinale, and I'd just like to say that it was a lot of effort making this film. Typically, the director tends to put me in takes which involve me walking across a whole trail and right across the screen, and it involves numerous takes often, and sometimes the ground is actually rather hot, so I end up with a few blisters in the process.
ก่อนอื่นต้องสวัสดีทุกคนนะครับผมรู้สึกเป็นเกียรติมากที่ได้มาร่วมงานวันนี้และผมดีใจมากๆเลยครับผมก็ขอบคุณทางผู้กำกับมากและก็ทางคุณลีคังเซินครับผมขอบคุณมากๆที่ได้ร่วมผลงานกับผู้กำกับอีกครั้งครับผมขอบคุณครับ
First of all, I say hello to everyone. I feel honored to be here. I'm very happy to be here again. And very important for me to express my thanks to the director and to actor colleagues Li Kangsheng. We've been working together, and this time again, thank you very much.
Seems that no seats yet. Okay. So no, because we are also supposed to have some more mic. So sorry for the inconvenience. Chai, I would like to start asking you something very simple. This is the 10th chapter of this experience of the Worker series. When you started. I think it was the 2014. Did you imagine that it would become so central in your work?
这个作品是从2011年开始的，12年开始的超过10年，拍了10部Thank you. Okay. I think. Wow. 这是我的一个愿望因为在2011年看到李康生在一个舞台剧里面，我的舞台剧里面的一个表演，就是很慢的移动他的身体，我觉得那个表演太美了他自己决定要这样演的那段戏，就我觉得太美了，那个身体的移动有一个很长的时间的概念，有一种艰难的感觉但是那个身体有一种甚至有一种哲理的感觉，哲思的感觉，所以我觉得舞台剧演完就没有了，我就当下就觉得说我要去拍一个影像，刚刚好那个时候我对拍剧情片已经很厌倦了所以我想说到底我还可以拍什么电影，它好像行者这个概念好像一条绳子一样我抓住了它我的一个救命的绳子一样我跟电影的关系有一个重新的开始这样子。
Well, to be exact, the Walker series started in 2012, and I've spent a total of 10 years on the series, and it now runs to 10 installments. It was something that I wanted to do for a long time. In fact, it was in 2011 when I saw Li Kangsheng in a theatre play of mine, and I was really struck by his performance, his extremely slow movements of his body, which I thought had a kind of beauty all of their own to them, and because it was his decision to move in that way, but it gave me a sense of really taking a long time, a sense of arduous movement, and for me that had a real metaphysical significance to it. Unfortunately, this was a theatre play, and so when the performance was over, it was all over. There was no more of it, and so I decided I wanted to make it into a film instead, and that was actually quite a coincidence for me because I had become tired at that point of making feature films. So the Walker series for me has become a kind of important thread, and a thread which has also saved me and allowed me to redefine my relationship to film.
我当时只想一个问题只有走路可以变成一部电影吗？
I was thinking about this issue at the time. Is it only possible to make a film by walking?
可以吗？
Is that okay?
And I think these questions could be also goes to Li Kangsheng, because it's many years now that you work on this. So I wonder if the preparation, the method is changed or is becoming more easy for you. How did you work at the beginning? How are you working on it now after so many years?
其实越来越容易，因为已经了解蔡导那么多年，而且他的东西完全不要准备，甚至走路平常我也没有锻炼过，就到要拍了再开始走，从来没有训练过。然后他拍的剧情片最近越来越少，那比较多是半纪录片或纪录片。剧情片的问题可能也没有，因为他现在慢慢少拍了，他现在都在画画，对，最近还开了一个画展，所以拍他的戏真的是可以很自由、很放松，就是拍摄的时候比较辛苦而已。
Actually, it's got easier and easier, and it's also because I have got to know Tammy Liang much better over the course of the years. And this didn't require any specific preparation. I mean, my way of walking didn't require any rehearsals as such. You know, it all just happened on set. And Director Tsai is making fewer and fewer feature films these days. He's more into films that are partially or fully documentary in nature. So the feature film issue is less and less of an issue. Actually, he's doing a lot of painting at the moment. He's had exhibitions of his paintings. And so working with him on the screen is a process that allows me to be very free and in my element, even if it is a difficult process to complete.
This thing, thank you, Lee, for saying something about the painting, because you, Tsai, many times said in many interviews that for you, the Worker series is more something related to the painter experience. I wonder, how do you feel regarding the viewers, us? Like one of your goals maybe is bringing us in a state of having a similar experience or viewing, viewing a painting much more than a film.
是主持人讲的很精准啊，就是我的想法电影到底可以在看什么啊？这是我一路在思考的问题。从我刚开始拍电影，我就在思考说，电影还可以改吗？还可以改吗？但是这个问题30年并没有解决啊。经过30年后，我还在问这个问题，就是说，所以怎么讲？就是说，行者系列那个创作的概念非常像绘画哦，我像一个画家出外写生的一个概念，所以是那个准备的概念跟电影工业的准备是不太一样的。
I think you've really hit the nail on the head with that question. Thank you very much for that. It's a question that I was asking myself a lot right at the beginning of my career as a filmmaker. What can a film actually do? What can you actually look at through the lens of cinema? And I've been wondering about that same issue for 30 years as a filmmaker. What can a film do? And I won't claim to have found a solution to that question. If we look at the concept behind the Walker series, it is very similar to this concept of painting, sort of outdoor or landscape painting. I think you've hit the nail on the head with that one.
我自己从一开始拍电影就对，譬如说写剧本这个概念，我就非常的不舒服。一直都是不舒服，对写剧本这个概念，因为剧本它是在电影工业的那个环节里面，它是用来找资金的它是用来做拍片的一个工具的就是你需要用这个方式才能进到这个行业去做一个作品但是我在拍片的很多过程里面，我常常都觉得，我拍电影的时候并不完全依赖剧本，我更多是在一面拍一面找寻我拍摄的方法，而不是剧本它就是要有一个故事的结构，它要完成那个故事。但是我其实常常都不觉得我要去完成一个故事，而是我怎么表达我想说的内容这样子。所以长期下来，我后来非常厌倦写剧本当然我对电影工业的很多概念都很厌倦。后来我就思考到说，连戏院的一些制度都让我非常困惑，院线的一些概念让我非常困惑。所以你要拍成一个作品，电影大家认知的那种电影，你就必须依循电影工业、戏院的制度 来完成一个作品。可是我觉得那是一种捆绑，我们后来越来越觉得我被困住了。
And it's one that involves moving away from this industrialized concept of cinema. Actually, from the beginning, I've always been uneasy with the concept of a screenplay as well. Normally speaking, in the film industry, a screenplay is the thing that you use to try and get funding for your production. So if you want to create things on screen, you have to apparently have a screenplay. But for me, in my process of filmmaking, I've certainly not been reliant on screenplays. I've instead filmed and sort of found my way forward at the same time while working. It's not being all set out in advance with a screenplay with a storyline that then has to achieve some kind of resolution. I don't need that in order to create a film. And so, like with many other things in the film industry, I've gradually become tired of this idea of a screenplay. And that's not the only thing in the film industry that I've become tired of. I've become tired of this whole idea of the cinema or the cinema circuit, that kind of system. And normally speaking, if you want to make a film, then you have to work with that film industry system and the cinema system. But I think those are shackles that constrain filmmakers, and I'm trying to move past them.
我自己的作品的属性不是怎么讲我自己的作品的属性引导我去了美术馆。
I think it's the particular type of works that I produce that have naturally led me to the art museum.
我觉得很可能美术馆里面的那些创作可能比我们自由的很多。
Because I think the kind of creation that you have with art museums is a much freer type.
但是美术馆跟戏院是壁垒分明的。
On the other hand, there is a very clear barrier between the cinema on the one hand.
这使到我想到说，我们活在当代，我们使用电影是不是受限太久了？
And the cinema on the other, and that really makes me wonder. Have we been living with these constraints for too long with this modern way of electricity-based existence?
我们做观众可以在电影院里面遇到怎么样的电影，怎么样的一种表达，其实是非常有限的。
The kind of expression which the film audience can actually access is actually very limited in range.
所以越来越不觉得拍电影是一种创作，而是一种工业的制造而已。
So I've more and more felt that people making films is less a process of creation than industrial production.
什么叫电影？这是我一直在问我自己的问题。
And so I've been constantly preoccupied with this question of what a film actually is.
我除了拍一个大家了解的电影的懂得那种概念的电影之外，我还可以做什么在电影院里面？
And apart from making a film that everybody thinks that they can understand, what else can I do with film?
所以我开始离开逃离剧本的概念就是我开始思考说，我除了剧情片，我还可以做什么？
So that was the origin of my gradual break with the idea of a screenplay, this consideration of what else I can do with film.
行者是一个开始对我来说。
And so, for that reason, the Walker series is a start.
有的人觉得行者好像是美术馆的作品，可是我觉得它非常需要在电影院里面被观看。
Some people see the Walker series as definitely belonging to a museum type production, but I think it's very, very necessary that these be seen in the cinema.
电影院应该可以包容更多的可能的发展。
Because the cinema should embrace more creative possibilities.
Thank you for the answer. Of course, I didn't mention it at the beginning, but you are free. You're free to make questions. Just raise your hand, and there are mic. Yes, we have a question there.
Just a quick question: how you define when these type of movies are over, finished, and this is the moment to stop? When the time is not that linear for you in that sense?
是我有一个经验，是我拍其中一个行者的时候，因为我们的还是有预算的一些限制哈。我拍摄每次拍摄行者的天数都差不多因为预算因为资金的关系，我必须要去控制，可能我拍4天，我可能拍1个礼拜。行者其实不是很容易拍的。
Well, I do have one constraint, which is budgetary constraints, which decide the number of days that I can spend filming, whether that be 4 days or 7 days of filming time. The films in the Walker series were not simple matters to film.
但是我心里面一直觉得自己是一个画家，我记得其中有一个作品是我拍了4天，其实我还没拍完，但是我的钱用完了。
But I see myself as a painter at heart. I remember there's one work of mine which I spent 4 days shooting, but I felt that it wasn't yet finished.
拍完其中一个镜头，因为没有天光了，就必须要收工，没有光线了，必须要收工。但是我觉得我好像还没有拍完，可是怎么办呢？但是我又觉得我是个画家，所以我就告诉自己说，就这样子，就这样吧。我的画就画到这里了。
So I had this take that I wanted to improve, but the light was gone that day, so we had to down tools. So I said to myself, as a painter, well, we'll just take it that far.
所以我觉得我有这种心态，我就变得比较自由一点。
And I think with that kind of approach, I become freer.
刚才你们看这个行者，它其实是有一个概念是它是一直往前的，它是一直在进行中的，它并没有结束，它也没有开始。
One thing that you have seen about the walker just now is that the walker is always moving forward, progressing. There's never actually an end or even a beginning.
我很开心，我的每一个行者都有一群观众陪着李康生在旅行。
And it's been a source of joy to me that with every installment in the Walker series, there has been an audience that has accompanied Li Kangsheng on his journey.
我拍到什么，你们就看到什么。
So you see what I managed to film.
Thank you.
I think that's a question there. Yes.
你好，蔡明亮导演，感谢你带来这部电影。关于无所住，因为无所住是出自于《金刚经》的“因无所住而生其心”这个。那么，整部电影观看下来是从水边出发，然后在水边结束。那么你会认为，鉴于你刚才有说这不是一个开始，也不是一个结束，那么你会觉得这是一个循环呢，还是说它达到了某一种完美的心境？然后我还有额外的一个问题就是，请问你在拍摄这部影片的时候，你自己的心境是什么样子的呢 ？Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tsai, for this film that you brought to us, Abiding Nowhere. Now, I know that the title of the film actually comes from the Diamond Sutra. And I also note that both at the beginning and at the end of the film, we are by a body of water. Now, you yourself have just said there is no beginning and there's no end. Does that mean that it's more of a cycle? Is it something that perfects itself, or do we end up with a sort of final, perfect state of mind? And one extra question, what was your state of mind while filming?
谢谢这位观众提出来，就说这个 title 是《金刚经》里面一句最重要的一个经文。
Well, thank you very much for pointing that out. Yes, the title of the film comes from one of the most important lines in the Diamond Sutra.
我这个行者的概念其实是有一个更精神上的那种指引精神层面的 是来自于唐朝的玄奘取经的那个概念。
I think there's another important layer of spiritual meaning to the concept of the walker, which is the monk Xuanzang traveling in the Tang Dynasty to collect the scriptures.
1400年前的这个和尚是我的生命中最喜欢的一个佛教的人物。
And that monk, who was around 1,400 years ago, is one of my favorite personalities in Buddhism.
因为他在那个年代是一个交通不发达的一个还没有被开发的一个年代，资讯也没有被开发的年代，他是用走路的方式从西安走到印度来回，为了取经。
That was an era, let's remember, when travel was extremely difficult and information was certainly not as developed as it is today. But the monk Xuanzang traveled from Xi'an to India to collect the Buddhist scriptures and then traveled all the way back.
我最被他感动的一个旅程是他踩上了沙漠的那个过程。我觉得一个人好像有什么目的要去做一件事情，开始一个旅程，但是当他踩上沙漠的时候，我觉得那个目的性消失了。这样理解我的意思吗？就没置生死于度外的概念没有生死的概念了，就是往前走的概念。
I think the part of that journey by the monk that moved me the most is his journey through the desert. I mean, normally when you start on a journey, you have an objective, you have a goal, but when he reaches the desert, that whole concept of a destination or an objective evaporates, and he's just in this process of moving.
我觉得行者里面有一个我加进来的观念就是慢，非常缓慢的行走，李康生的那个慢。
And there's one concept which I've added in the Walker concept, in the Walker series of films, which is this concept of slowness in Li Kangsheng's style.
他在当代有一种叛逆的感觉，反叛的感觉，因为我们活在当代是一个非常快速的，讲究快速、追求快速、追求方便的一种价值，但是李康生的慢或者跟玄奘的那个精神是非常契合的，就是有一种反叛的概念。
And that's something that is at loggerheads with a lot of what the modern era is about, because the modern era is all about speed. It's about this constant search for speed and convenience. And with this, Li Kangsheng is much closer to the same spirit that the monk Xuanzang had.
看行者不只是慢慢的看李康生，也慢慢的看这个世界，用比较慢的节奏、速度来观看我们当下的世界。所以我希望李康生的行走可以到世界不同的地方去走。
And so viewing the Walker series is not just about viewing Li Kangsheng, it's also about viewing the world in a different way, with a very slow rhythm and speed, viewing it in a completely different way. And that's why I wanted the Walker series to go to different parts of the world.
那我回答你的问题，我拍行者其实每一次都真的很像一个画家，比较不焦虑，比较不那么焦虑，拍的时候。
In direct answer to your question, the state of mind that I had when filming every installment of the Walker series was similar to that of a painter, so not particularly stressed.
你知道拍电影的人是全世界最焦虑的一种行业。
You may be aware that the film industry is one of the most stressful industries.
懂啊，谢谢。
Thanks.
Please, yes.
导演您好，我想问一下，就是影片中这两个角色之间有什么关联吗？或者说两者之间本身就没有关联，就是都是行者。
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Phil, I'd like just to ask, is there a link between these two characters, or is there no link and are they both walkers?
很希望你有机会看到我全部的行者。
I hope that you'll be able to see the whole series of Walker films.
行者跟我们的《西游记》也有一点关联。
was it's linked also a bit to the journey to the West.
我在拍这个行者的时候，我也想找一点乐趣给自己，所以我有时候想说，这个和尚会遇到谁？就像唐僧在《西游记》里面会遇到孙悟空，会遇到那匹马，会遇到蜘蛛精我自己会想这些问题，但是我并没有告诉观众。
I tried to find a little bit of fun in the process of filming as well, so I kept asking, like, who is this monk going to meet or bump into during the process of the Walk of Films? And going to that classic, The Journey to the West, it's a bit like the monk, Tang Sung, running into all these different characters, Sun Wukong or that horse and so on. So, I have that in my mind, but I don't try to give the answer to the audience.
亚农很特别，因为他是我最近这几年遇到的演员，我想跟他合作。
There's something very special about Anong, who is an actor that I met just in the last few years, but I really wanted to work with.
他在我的第9部行者就已经演出了。
He already appeared in the 9th installment of the Walker series.
那时候我觉得他好像在演一个蜘蛛。
And I think that he was portraying a kind of spider at that time.
在等和尚的那个蜘蛛那这次我还是想找他演。
One that was waiting for the monk, and I wanted to bring him back in the 10th installment.
我觉得他也是普罗大众的一个行者。
I think that as a walker, he's very much a man of the people.
一个旅行者，一个旅游者，有一点孤独，所以这2个孤独的行者，在这个作品里面没有相遇，但是我觉得好像他们都，在那个他们的步程里面，好像是感觉好像是一个灵魂的一种怎么讲一种祷告文的感觉，一种祷告的感觉。
So I see him as a kind of traveler, a somewhat lonesome traveler. So you have these two lonesome characters who don't actually meet, but I think that the tracks that they follow, if you look at them in spiritual terms, it's kind of like a prayer.
我也试着发展亚农的这种旅行的概念，有没有可能变成我另外一个作品？
And I'm trying to work more on this idea of Anon traveling, and maybe that will become a work of mine in its own right.
I think there's a question there. Yes.
蔡导下午好啊！我看完这个片子，给我非常震撼。就是刚刚森哥说它是一个纪录片或者是半纪录片，我看完这个片子，我没法去给它定义它是一部纪录片或者是部电影。我感觉它是在这个领域里面新开辟的一种视觉呈现。那么你把它叫做行者，那么我看完过，我觉得更像一场人生，或者在人生的基础上，它是一个修行。我看见森哥走上坡路，也有走过石类，也有走过河流，这些都感觉这是我们人生要经过的。那么我最主要是想问一下蔡导，是什么样的机缘开始想要拍摄行者？是自己因为学佛了吗？还是已经想要去修行？谢谢。
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Tsai, for this film, which really has left a very deep impression on me. And people have asked earlier whether you now work with documentary or semi-documentary forms. I can't really decide what kind of work it is. If anything, for me, it's a new form. I think the Walker series is maybe just about an approach towards life, an approach towards cultivation. In particular, you see the different types of terrain which are crossed by the walkers, and we start with rivers and other types of landscape, all of which must be passed through. So I'd like to ask, what, on the spiritual level, was your inspiration for the series? Was it a particular type of Buddhist belief or other type of self-cultivation?
我觉得你的理解非常好就是它不是纪录片，它也不是个剧情片，它是一种影像的表达 什么时候开始我想拍不太一样的电影？其实一直都在想这个问题。如果你看我的剧情片，你也知道我在做跟别人不一样的剧情片。但是我觉得如果我们不去改变观众的观影习惯的话，我们的戏院就会僵化掉。那当我们的戏院僵化，我们的电影工业僵化掉，首当其冲，这些拍电影的人全部都僵化掉，观众也僵化掉，所以电影就真的就死了那种感觉。所以我在台湾做很多事情，都是试图要改变大家的习惯。我拍了一部电影，13张脸的特写。老人的脸的特写，加一个空镜头，我变成一部电影。然后这种表达方式，很多人都觉得那应该去美术馆放一放这样子可是你到美术馆看的时候，大家也没有专心在看，3分钟就看了一个画面就走掉了所以大家看东西有很多很多的习惯和包袱，更何况是要买票的戏院。你知道吧？这是一种消费的概念根深蒂固。所以我把那13张脸的电影放到戏院去上片，然后我自己去卖票，我让1万个观众经历到一种不太一样的观影习惯的过程。我发现他们其实没有排斥，他们也很喜欢，也能接受。但是我们创作人很少去给他们这些东西。我们给他们已经习惯的东西，因为这样才能卖钱。所以我自己很在意行者我坐在台下，我也可以理解到有人会是不耐烦，会每个人看都不一样。为什么会不一样？因为它是一个作品来的，它不是一个商品，它不是一个罐头。你每个人看一定是很不同的，真的就跟看一幅画是一样的。所以我觉得我们的电影院是要被我们的电影创作，我们的戏院的制度，通通要重新被审视一遍，才有可能发展电影。这样子，谢谢你。
Well, thank you very much for your question. I think you have a very good understanding of this. Indeed, this film is not a documentary, it's not a feature film either. It's best seen as an act of visual expression. Now, when did I start wanting to make films that were completely different? Well, it's a question that I've been preoccupying myself with for a long time. And actually, if you look at my work in feature films, you'll note that they are also quite unusual. Because from my point of view, we need to change people's viewing habits. If we don't do that, then the cinema will ossify. The film industry will ossify over time. And that includes filmmakers, by the way. We will just be in a dead end. And this will be the end of it for the film industry. So what I've been trying to do, a lot of what I've been trying to do in Taiwan has been aimed at changing people's viewing habits. I'll give an example. I made a film which consisted of 13 close-up shots of older people plus 1 blank shot. That was the film. Now, a lot of people thought that that kind of visual production belonged in a museum, not on a cinema screen. But you have problems with museums as well. People, when they visit a museum, they might go and stand in front of one of the works in the museum, spend 3 minutes, and then wander off somewhere else. You have these ingrained habits when it comes to the way that people access content. And you have that especially with the cinema. People feel that they've bought a ticket. They are carrying out an act of consumption. So I went ahead with this film consisting of 13 close-up shots of faces, and I decided I would sell the tickets, and I sold tickets to 10,000 people so that they could access visual content in this completely different way. And actually, they ended up not rejecting it at all. They were very accepting of it. The problem is that we give people far too few opportunities to do things like that, and the reason for that is basically that so many people are motivated by profit. And so that's why the Walker series is so important for me. Now, of course, I can understand if people have different reactions in the auditorium if some people become a little bit impatient while watching. But you have to also ask why people might have that reaction. What I've tried to create is not a commodity, it is a work of art. It's very much like a painting in the sense that different people looking at the same painting will react in a different way. I think that we need to look again at the cinema and the whole institution that it represents if we're going to achieve some progress.
There's a question there?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes.
导演你好，我想问一个关于方法论
One
的。
there and then here. Okay.
我想问一个关于方法论的问题，就是除了您刚才说到是一直在往前走之外，您还是怎么去选择这个行走的线路的呢？因为当我的感受是，我觉得这个行走的过程是非常丰富的，但同时它也是有点片段式的，有室内的、室外的，也有自然的和城市里的。然后我会在想，就是李康生老师也是这么缓慢的行走着，排着队进的博物馆吗？他也是这样走着去过的红绿灯吗？所以我很好奇您是怎么进行这个线路选择的？谢谢。
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Tsai. I'd like to ask a question about methodology. You mentioned this idea of a constant progress and moving forward, but I'd just like to ask, how did you pick the walking routes that Li Kangsheng was to follow? Because we have a real mix in the film. You have indoor scenes, you have outdoor scenes, you have urban, and you have more rural scenes. So I'd just like to ask how that was chosen. And obviously, I've been wondering about how Li Kangsheng dealt with a traffic light, for example, crossing the road, or how he actually got into the museum.
我最想要让李康生走哪里，你知道吗？我最希望他去天安门走一下。我不知道李康生会不会被警察抓走，我不知道。Okay.
One place I really would like to have Li Kangsheng walk through is Tiananmen Square. I don't know if he's getting arrested for doing that.
Yeah. 其实拍行者最大的准备功夫就是看景。你说华盛顿我熟不熟？我不熟。我拍了马赛我也不熟。我虽然去过马赛几次，对我来说马赛我是游客来的到哪里都会。所以我真的觉得这个旅程非常像唐玄奘当年从那个西安到印度的过程是一样的，每一处都是陌生的，每一处都是，但是每一处都是这个世界的一个角落。我都在选我喜欢的景。当然有一些我不可能叫李康生过马路，一定会造成很大的问题了所以你就不要去想那个了再简单一点，就是你会因为行者你会看到这个世界的我想跟大家讲一件事情韩国的泉州在5月份，今年的5月份准备要放10部行者在电影院里面你就会看到李康生走了哪里其实都是很漂亮，这个世界是很美的，很好看的，很多地方都是这样子李康生也很好看，走我也期待李康生可以再走个10年走10年什么意思？他那时候60多岁了，或者他走到80岁，他怎么走我觉得很美耶。你知道这样的表达好像没有在变，但是它其实在很多细节在变。20年后的世界又是怎么样的？20年后再走一次东京，其中有一部是东京的，东京就是什么感觉？我觉得这个作品非常有趣，像画画一样。我真的是在到处去写生的感觉。那我也在发展一种电影叫肖像电影，我在我在拍人，好像我在画人一样。我还会继续再拍一部电影，我的计划我要再拍杨贵妹，我不要她叫她演一个角色，我只是想拍她这些都是我要思考的问题。这样子能不能创造更不太一样的电影？不一定要有剧情，不一定要有故事，懂我？不一定要感人，它也许就是很美。 你知道吧？杨贵妹到了60岁，她好不好看？她一定很好看。好，这就是我想做的事情，在电影院能够做的事情。好在电影这个创作媒材可以做的一个事情，因为电影太神奇了，就一个方块，它可以大特写，它可以大远景，你知道，它好像被框住，它又无限的延伸。好，我们很少去思考这个方块到底是什么。就像我觉得这个方块真的，我做一个导演，我觉得我也很像唐玄奘一样，好，对它充满了好奇，好，怎么样善用它，这是我们要做的事情。
Actually, a lot of it was just looking at different locations and seeing what I liked. I was basically a stranger in Washington, D.C. I made another installment of the series in Marseille, which I'd been to a couple of times before, but I was basically a tourist there. And for me, that process is very much like the monk Xuanzang traveling from Xi'an to India through a succession of unfamiliar terrains. But from my point of view, these are all different angles that our world has to it. So I've generally just picked different settings that appeal to me personally. Don't try and think about how Li Kangsheng as the walker might cross the road here. But if you want to understand it on a simpler level, it just so happens that in Gwangju in Korea, in May of this year, they're going to be showing all 10 installments of the Walker series. And you will see, if you go and watch all 10, you'll see just how much beauty there is in the world. Also in Li Kangsheng himself and his way of moving. I would hope that we can do another 10 years, that he can walk for another 10 years, because I would very much like to look at how he moves at the age of 60, at the age of 80. I'm sure that will have a beauty all of its own. And I've also wondered a lot about what some of these places will look like 20 years down the road. A lot of little details may well have changed. One of the installments is in Tokyo, for example. I'm wondering about how Tokyo will look a couple of decades down the road. So for me, the process is very much like that of a landscape painter. On that point, by the way, I'm working on another type of film which I call portrait film. For example, one of my frequent collaborators, Yang Gui-mei, I'm wondering whether I can just make a film with her, without her playing any particular character, with her just as her on the screen. So I'm wondering whether I can bring that sense of beauty that can really move people without the film having a plot or a story as such. Because if I think about Yang Gui-mei at the age of 60, she will certainly have a lot of beauty at that point as well. And these are things that you can actually do with the cinema. Cinema has things that other arts don't. You can use close-ups, you can use wide takes, you have all these tools at your disposal. Sometimes people think of it just as a rectangle which you have to work with, but we should work on transcending that rectangle. And I, as a filmmaker, try to approach this, and I think this is the way it should be. I try to approach this with the same kind of curiosity as the monk Xuanzang.
Thank you. So I have one here and another one, and then 3. Okay, last 3, 4, 5. No, I can't. Sorry. Let's do the last 3, please. Okay.
我想问一下2位演员，李康生先生还有阿农，你们是怎么解读这个行者系列的？刚刚导演说了很多他的看法，那你们作为演员在这个戏里面，你又是怎么想的？谢谢。
I'd like to ask both of the actors what your own personal takes are on the Walker series, how you approach it. And the director has shared a lot just now about his concept of it, but how have you approached being a walker?
Uh, ส่วนตัวผมและวิธีการก็ผมก็ไม่ได้ทำอะไรมากก็ตามผู้กำกับบอกเลยครับเพราะว่าผมไม่มีสคริปต์ผู้กำกับไม่มีสคริปต์ให้ก็คือรู้ตอนหน้างานเลยครับไม่ได้ทำอะไรมากครับ
I personally didn't do so much. I don't have much methodology or concept because I just did what I've been told to do. Everything was spoken or made arrangement at the set on that day. So I just listened to my director.
就是玄奘的精神，因为我那个袈裟换过4、5套，对，那个有3.5公斤重。有一次要拍行在水上，导演说，我跟导演建议说，马来西亚那么热，要不要换一件？然后他就找了另外一个设计师来做，但是感觉不对，所以我在很热的地方也是要穿那个深袍，很冷的地方也是。穿完后赶快去泡脚，因为东京那时候都零下的时候，对，走完一段我就要去泡热水。也是在东京那时候我开始脖子旧疾又复发了，对，所以可能也有关系吧。我觉得是我的9981难，这个要度过会比较轻松，就继续往前走，玄奘的精神，一步一脚印，我觉得是这样。
Well, my approach has been very much like that of the monk Xuanzang. Actually, I wear monks' robes on screen. Got through about 4 or 5 sets of those monks' robes, and they're heavy as well. They weigh about 3.5 kilos. And there was one film where we were working in Malaysia, which is a very hot place. So I asked the director, can we not come up with something else for me to wear here? So he went to a different designer, and the designer came up with something, but it just wasn't right for us. So we went back to working with the same robes. So I wear these robes in some very hot places and also in some very cold places while filming. Cold to the extent that after we finish shooting, I have to go and soak my feet in hot water. For example, when we were filming in Tokyo, it was actually below 0 at the time, so I had to go straight back after filming and sit in a hot bath for a while. Actually, my neck problem came back when we were filming in Tokyo. I don't know if that was directly caused by that. But anyway, I see myself as very much like the monk Xuanzang, just in a constant process of moving forward.
我再讲一下那个僧袍，那个僧袍是一块红色的布，大概有10米，对，卷起来，然后服装是把它固定，然后没有剪裁过，对，然后重3.5公斤。
Just a note on the robes are saffron in color, and they're made from one piece of cloth 10 meters long, which is rolled up and then fixed in place in various ways by the costume designer without cutting the material. And they weigh a total of 3.5 kilos.
So you have the last two, one there, and then the fourth row here.
Hi. 谢谢蔡导，很好看的电影。我问题是，就是除了它的视觉上的呈现很美之外，我觉得就是电影的听觉也很突出。就是比如说当李康生在很慢的行走的时候，你在他的背景当中，有的时候可以听到很快的交通工具。就是飞驰而过的声音，或者就是在不同的地点，你可以听到很怎么说，很丰富、很错综复杂的声音。然后我想问，就是这种声音，比如说你是在哪里录的，然后你有在后制的过程当中，比如说经过处理，以及就是这种声音会对，比如说剪辑或者就是不同的行走片段在排列的。arrange 的过程当中会有影响吗？谢谢。
Well, thank you very much for such a wonderful film, Director Tsai. I'd like to ask a question, not about the visual aspect of the film, which I find to be very beautiful, but about the auditory aspect of the film, which I find very special. The things that you hear, for example, when Li Kangsheng is walking very slowly, at the same time you hear sounds of speeding traffic, for example, or other types of vehicle. And in other settings, you hear various very complex noises. I'd like to ask what was specifically done with sound in this film. Were they first recorded and then added in post-production, or how did you go about them? Was it an editing process where you arranged a kind of background soundtrack for each shot? How did you go about it?
声音当然很重要，行者行过的就是世界的各处，声音也是这个世界本来有的那个声音，你看到在森林里面，其实那是个公园，所以我们会收到交通的车子的声音什么的，我基本上都不会修改，不会去作假，说哇公园就要去制造一个森林的风那个气氛，虫鸣鸟叫天叫什么我都没有，我就是要还原回原来的声音，我拍到什么，但是我听到什么也很重要，大概是这样子。
Thank you very much for your question, and indeed sound is also very important. This series of films goes to different parts of the world, and sounds are very much a part of these places around the world. If we take the scenes in a forest, actually the forest is part of a park, and so you do actually hear quite a bit of traffic there. And I've not been trying to fake it, I've not been trying to fake a sort of pure forest vibe here by just going in and putting birdsong and various other things. Basically what you get here is what I see and also what I hear.
所以我说电影院是最好看影像的一个空间像我们昨天就要来试这个戏院的声音可能好莱坞的声音是很多各种的效果声，这种电影是没有的，它就是依靠原来的那个声音，那个音量的大小也很重要所以我自己很喜欢。我说我一直说我像个画家，但是电影毕竟它不是个画，它是有时间的流动的有空气在流动的，所以这在戏院里面看电影是一种很棒的一个经验看行者也是虚虚实实啦但是它就是这个世界的面貌。
So I really do think here again that the cinema is the best place and the best venue to access audiovisual content. Actually, we were sound checking in the cinema yesterday. But the film here doesn't use sound effects like you typically have in Hollywood films. I've not done this here. And also the volume of different sounds is very important. A film is not like a painting in fundamental aspects. You have a flow of air, you have a flow of time. So I think the cinema is the best possible medium through which to access this kind of content. And within the Walker series, you have an experience which is just very realistic.
The last one?
The last one.
蔡导好，小康好，杨总好。我觉得这是对我来说非常感动的一次观影体验。然后我记得好几幕，当小康离开这个荧幕之后，我感觉好像有一个鬼魂停在了那个画面中间。然后我的问题是，就是当这个摄影机停止之后，这个行者的时间，它会不会像以鬼魂的形式一样，还是会比如说给生活带来一些速度的一些阻力，比如说很难回归到正常的生活的速度，就当摄影机停止那一刻之后，这是我的问题。
你的问题好深邃啊。
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Tsai and Li Kangsheng, et al. For such a moving film, I found. I'd like to ask the following question. There were various takes where I saw Li Kangsheng moving across the screen and then leaving the frame. And after he'd left the frame, you felt still a kind of presence of him in the frame. It was like a spirit lingering there, a kind of soul that's still lingering there. So the question is, after you finished filming, was it easy for him to just get back into normal life mode, or did it become quite difficult for him to sort of reacclimatize to the normal rhythm of things? Oh, that question, thank you for the question. It's a very profound one.
电影就是有这个那个能力哈，能量哈。你看了一个电影，到底带了什么东西走出戏院，蛮重要的。我们的观众，大部分一般的观众看电影可以变成那个谈话的那种资料交换剧情啦交换感受啦的知道我的意思吗？你看完这个电影，印象深刻的应该不是那个故事，那个故事不久就被取代了。是有一些东西被你带走了。比如说我自己，我那天就说了，我到现在，我大学的时候看了一个电影，是法斯宾达的《恐惧吞噬心灵》然后那个老太太我不认识她，那个摩洛哥黑人我不认识他，可是这两个人的脸，他都不是我习惯的荧幕的那种脸，很漂亮，谈情说爱之类，不是白马王子，不是，然后他们是很普通的两张脸，其实在街上你就可以遇到他，但是他放在电影的时候变成一个大特写，他把他的故事告诉你的时候，那两张脸就印烙在我的生命里面了，他告诉我什么叫真实，什么叫现实，什么叫世界。我觉得我不知道，我就觉得电影有这种电影的影像有这种力量，所以要去善用这个影像，要去发挥它的力量。所以我也很希望行者会烙印在你的脑袋里面，到你的生活里面。有人看我的电影，就说他过红绿灯的时候没有那么焦虑，懂我的意思吗？他过红绿灯的时候，等电梯的时候，他可以发现旁边有一盆花，他没有那么焦虑。我觉得这些都是会影响生活的。
I'll do my best to answer it. I mean, this is all about the type of energy that film can bring to you, and what you take home after viewing a film is very, very important. Most film goers end up with, conversation material. They can talk to other people about the plot of the film they've just seen or about their emotional reactions to it. But some films give you things that you can actually not just take home, but take in to your life itself. And this film, for example, clearly what will have left the deepest impression on you is not the plot. The plot is going to rapidly be forgotten here. But I hope that you can take home other things from it. And that's been my own experience as a filmmaker over the years. If I think all the way back to one of the earliest films that made a real mark on it, it was a mark on me. That was the film Fear Eats the Soul by Rainer Werner Fassbinder. And if you look at that film, you have an old lady and you have a black Moroccan man there. And I still remember them to this day, even though these were two faces that I wasn't familiar with. They certainly weren't sort of the classic type of face or appearance that you find in a love story on screen. It wasn't the classic Prince Charming character that you had there. They were very much sort of ordinary looking people there. But through all these close-ups that Fassbinder employed, they really became faces that I could never forget. They became part of my life in that sense. And it's through that process that I came to understand what really is genuine, what really is reality, what this world is actually about. And that's the power that the language of film can have. You just have to use it in the right way. And I would like the Walker series of films to leave you with something similar, that you don't just take away, but take into yourselves, and something that stays with you. Some people have said to me actually that after watching these, they feel much less stress when waiting at a traffic light or waiting for the lift to come, for example. They start noticing vase of flowers next to the lift instead, so they don't have that same sort of sense of unease and just wanting things to move forward as they normally would have.
I think we are really good at every single answer. We learned something was unforgettable. Thank you, Mr. Sami Liang. Thank you, Mr. Shen. Thank you, Anand. The workers. And thank you all for being here.